As the number of concealed carry permit holders is on the rise in the United States, so is the number of spouses or unarmed family members or significant others who are going to be with those armed people while they're out in public. And while the chances of a conflict are still extremely, extremely low, there is that possibility, and in that possibility is also the chance that your significant other or your unarmed spouse is not going to know what to do in that kind of a situation. And I want to talk about that in this video. There are basically 4 types of carriers, firearms carriers in the United States. The first are your very open carriers. You know, they're open carry. They will talk about it to anyone. They will, petition. They will go to, open carry marches. They will, campaign, all that kind of stuff. There is your second group of people is the semi-public people. They will, they will, if they'll talk about if it comes up in context. They might go to, an open carry rally here or there. They might go to an open carry event, but for the most part, they keep it pretty quiet that they conceal carry. Your third type of people are the people who tell only their closest friends and family that they carry. Some even just say, hey, just my spouse knows, or just a very, very few select number of people. And then there's the fourth type of carriers who say, I am the only person who knows. A lot of people I have heard say, even my spouse does not know that I carry, and they usually are very, very anonymous, on gun forums, YouTube, the internet, they'll just say, hey, only I know that I carry. I'm not saying which one is right or which one is wrong. That is your own prerogative, your own right as a concealed carrier to let people know or not let people know. The only thing that I could find dangerous, potentially dangerous, or potentially cautious about your fourth type of people, the people who say it's, I am the only person who knows, my spouse doesn't even know, is it could be a bad idea, because if you were out with a spouse, but if you're not married, who cares? If you're the only person in your household and nobody else knows that you carry, big deal. But if you're married and you're out in public and your spouse is unarmed, you're armed, and you have never let your spouse know, if you get into a conflict where your firearm could potentially be necessary, not necessarily mean it would be, of course you have a duty first to retreat. In many states it's a legal duty, but I would hope as a personal duty you want to avoid any kind of confrontation that might lead to using a firearm in the first place. But for one, the spouse could make the matters worse. They could panic at the sight of the gun. If you do have to draw your gun, suddenly they're going, where did this gun come from, in an already very tense situation. They could escalate the situation by screaming at you, what the heck are you doing with a gun? It could make matters much worse. They could be a distraction. You're suddenly in a situation where you're supposed to be putting all your attention, all your energy into the situation that's going on, de-escalating it, dealing with what's right in front of you, and you've got a spouse who is maybe screaming, maybe crying, maybe completely freaking out by the fact that you even have a gun to begin with, and you're suddenly having to deal with 2 situations, calming your spouse down and dealing with the situation. It could be a very bad situation there. They can also hinder your ability to act. Some spouses, or some people in general, doesn't even have to be a spouse, their way of dealing is to cling. They can grab onto you. They could hold on to you. Suddenly you can't draw. Suddenly you can't defend yourself. That could be something that would be a problem. They could also get hurt. If suddenly you need to use your firearm, you need to draw it, you need to fire, what if they get in the line of fire? What if they bump you and while you're acting and cause you to make a poor shot? The potential for bad things to happen if your spouse or your very close significant other, if you're just on a casual date and you haven't gotten to the part where you're talking about politics and gun control and whether or not carrying is good or bad, that's something that you want to, you'd want to talk to or think about in your own course of dating. But I'm talking about a relationship that's already supposed to be intimate. You're already supposed to be sharing pretty big secrets, not necessarily secrets, but pretty big parts of your life. And I'd say concealed carry is a pretty big part of someone's life. So not telling someone who's already supposed to be privy to kind of your intimate life could have a lot of potential to be hurtful in that kind of a situation. So to avoid that, to avoid all those things that I just listed, I would recommend having a plan. Even if your spouse does not necessarily agree with your carrying a gun. I know a lot of people who say, hey, my wife is just not on board. She doesn't really have a problem with it. She hasn't told me I couldn't do it, but she just doesn't necessarily, she doesn't want to carry. She's not really into it. You should still have a plan. You should still have kind of something that you've gone over and said, hey, I know you don't really agree with this, but just so that I don't end up hurting you, you don't end up hurting yourself, and we don't end up with a more tense situation, this is the plan for how I would like us to respond as a couple if you are ever with me in a confrontation where my firearm may be potentially necessary. This plan is going to be an example plan, and what I have, I've broken this into two parts. One part is going to be the role or the responsibility of what I would like to call the primary responder. And the primary responder is what I consider the person with the gun. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is a male, or because it could be a female. There are plenty of people I know who are female and they carry, but their husband doesn't carry. So this role is not necessarily specifically for a man. This is just whoever in the group, in the couple, happens to be the armed individual. And then the second person we're going to be talking about is going to be the support person, and that's how it's going to be split up here. Now, like I said, this is an example plan that we've brought up, and as the primary responder, we're going to talk about the person with the gun now. Their first order of business, plan A, number 1, escape and evade, de-escalate, get out of the situation. If it's just a simple mugging, just a simple robbery, give them everything that you've got. Give them your money, give them your wallet, give them the keys to your car, give them whatever you've got. If it can save a life, if it can keep you from having to use your firearm, do it. Do whatever it is that you can do to de-escalate and save a life. That should be primary. Escape and evade, de-escalate, number 1. Barring that, saying that is impossible to do. You have tried everything you can. You've given them all your money. You've given them the keys to your car. You've given them your wallet, your purse, everything. And he still wants more. After that, there's nothing left to give you but your life. Then it's time to, if you can't fight, or if you can't flee, it's time to fight. And in that case, your second order of business, plan B, is to seek cover, create distance. Even if you can create just 6 more inches of distance, any distance that you can have from an attacker, from an assailant, is precious, 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 precious inches. So, especially if they have a weapon of some sorts, whether it be a gun, a knife, especially if it's a knife. Any distance that you can put between you is good. 3, negate the threat by any means necessary. 4, provide cover. If your spouse needs to flee, you need to flee. Provide cover for your escape. And E, resume escape and evading. Continue to get out of there. Try to get out of there. If all it takes is just... So that's for your primary responder, your person with the gun. De-escalate or escape and evade, seek cover and create distance, negate the threat, provide cover, resume escaping and evading. So that's the example of the primary responder's role. Support person or unarmed spouse or significant other. Number 1, spread out. Plan A. Create a distance between yourself and the primary responder. And the reason for this is, one, you're creating two targets, and you're creating, I see what's distracting me. Say hello. You haven't been on YouTube for a while. Say hi, everyone. Okay, that being said, okay. Spread out, create distance from the primary responder. And like I said, the reason for this is you're creating two targets, and you are making it harder for the assailant or the attacker to keep track of both of you. And this could be a very good thing. It could cause confusion. It could even cause confusion to the point where they don't want to continue their attack anymore, because now they're suddenly going, oh, you know, what's this person going to do? What's this person going to do? What's this person going to do? You might actually even create confusion to the point where they just give up and they leave, causing or separating your heightening your chances of getting out of there successfully by just separating, creating space. Number 2, create distance. Not only are you creating distance from each other, your primary and your secondary, but you're also creating distance from your attacker, from your assailant. Again, because precious, precious inches could save your life. 3, silently observe. This is important. I've seen so many, police videos, etc., robbery videos, where you've got the meddling third party, the third party who's in there just causing the tension to go up and to go up and to go up, because oh, well, that's not what he said, that's not what he meant, that's not what, oh, you're just an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, hey, you get out of our, you are causing, or you are bringing tension into an already very tense situation. And the last thing you want to do is to have that happen. You don't want to bring tension to an already tense situation. If the primary responder has it under control, if they're de-escalating, if they're being calm, if they're saying, listen, yes, here's my wallet, here's my money, in a soothing tone, here's everything I got, sorry, I don't have anything else, please have a nice night, whatever they're doing, just stay quiet. Create your space, create your distance, and stay quiet and watch. And then 4th on my list is check for multiple threats. While they're dealing with the situation, while your primary responder is dealing with the situation, look around. Do a 360. A lot of times, and this is true in a lot of different cases, whether it be a robbery, rape situation, whatever. You've got one person who comes up and talks, even if it's being innocent, even if they're just saying, hey man, you got some money, or the salesman technique, hey, or survey, hey, I got the survey, could you fill out? As the secondary person, look around. Is there anyone else approaching? Is there someone approaching from the back? Is there someone coming up from the side? And if it is, going on to number 5 here, communicate. If you are the person who is entrusted to be looking around, checking for other things while your primary responder is dealing with whatever it is your job to communicate what you see. Hey, there's someone behind us. Hey, there's someone coming up from behind us. Hey, there's someone coming up from the side. Communicate. And that's not just communicate with the primary responder, but communicate with the police as well. If the primary responder has gotten into an altercation to the point where the authorities do need to be called, because it might not necessarily get to that level, the primary responder might be able to say, hey, here's my money, here's whatever, and then the assailant leaves, and you now have the opportunity to get out, then you call the police, whatever. But, if they are in an altercation to the point where they cannot communicate with the police themselves, you pick up your cell phone, dial 911, call the police. And under that, I'm going to talk a little bit about things you want to talk about to the police in just a second. But lastly, retreat to the predetermined meeting point. If you can get out after the altercation has started, if you can get out, you're not armed. You have nothing to bring to the table. You've got, if there is an altercation to the point where it is going to the triggers and fists are flying, knives are coming out, guns are coming out, you have nothing left to do. Don't jump in. Don't get involved. You could get shot, you could get stabbed, you could get, even just a simple punch to the head can be life-threatening in some cases. If you have nothing to bring to the table, and sometimes even if you do have something to bring to the table, if you cannot safely proceed, get out. get out and move to a predetermined meeting point, and usually that will end up being a vehicle of some sorts, because that is the only place that you know that you can go where if your primary responder gets out of that threat, they're going to come to the same place too, to get out. So go to that place. You can usually, if you have keys, get in the car, lock yourself in the car, call the police. And which brings me to communicating with the authorities. So your primary responder is in an altercation. It's your job to communicate. You call the police. Basically, what you want to go over is who, what, when, where, and not necessarily how, because that'll be dealt with later, but just basically who, what, when, and where. The four W's, basically. Just remember that, 4 W's. Who. You want to talk about both the good guy and the bad guy. Yes, you want to describe the bad guy. Get dressed. Are they wearing a polo shirt, blue polo shirt, or, green jacket, green denim jacket, whatever. Height, approximate weight, hair color, distinguishing marks, tattoos if you can see any, shoes. Someone can toss a jacket, but it's kind of harder to toss your shoes. Someone running down the street in the middle of February in Maine with no shoes on is going to be suspicious. And vehicle, if you've seen it or if you can identify it, so just say, when you're on the phone, hey, it's this, 5-foot guy, and of course, skin color too, you want to get that in there. But, it's this 5'6" white guy. He's got blonde hair. He's got a green jacket on. He had a tattoo of a cross on his forehead. And, he was driving a Ford Escape. Anything that you can pick out. Even, I used to kind of make a game with my husband whenever we would go out to eat. I'd look around and try and catch everything. Even, things like ear piercings. I'd try and get down to the jewelry, Does he have a wedding ring on or not? Does he have his ears pierced? Is he wearing any bracelets, any kind of watch? Things like that. Yes, they can ditch them, but anything to help identify someone could be useful. And like I said, also describe the good guy. If it's getting into an altercation and the police are going to arrive to a situation that, firearms might be there, knives might be there, you want to be able to identify or help them identify the good guy. Say, hey, it was my husband who's in this fight with this guy. The guy demanded money, and my husband is responding. He has a firearm. He's wearing a blue shirt and white sneakers, and, he has flaming red hair that goes down to the middle of his back. Describe the good guy and the bad guy. What? Tell them what's happened. Tell them what is happening right now. Tell them when. It's happening right now. It happened 5 minutes ago. It happened 10 minutes ago. Where? Of course, tell them where it happened. An address is nice, but if you don't have an address, mile marker, cross street. Look for a cross street. Landmarks. Hey, we're 2 blocks down from the courthouse. If you're in an area where you're not familiar, kind of get in the habit of just looking at the cross streets as you're driving down the road. Oh, look, there's Washington and Vine. There's Jefferson and Fifth. Just kind of, nope, Johnson. Just kind of keep track of where you are. It's not only helpful in a situation like this, but it's helpful if you get lost. You can just call up and say, hey. And a lot of places, or a lot of cars and vehicles these days have GPS in them. You can actually, if you've retreated to your vehicle, you can turn on your GPS and say, hey, I am here. I've got my GPS on. It tells me that we are right here. Very helpful for communicating with the authorities. And finally, customize the plan for your family. This was just an example plan. If you talk to your spouse and say, honey, this is what I would like to have happen in the event that we're in a confrontation like this, and she says or he says, I just don't think that I could stand there and do the 360 and look for multiple threats. I don't think I'm going to have the presence of mind to do that. Say, okay, it's good to know that you can't do that. Then you know that that's on you to do. Then you can just say, hey, don't worry about it. Just get out of there. Just go, just get out of there, call the police and get them here. Or, or if they say, I just don't think I could stay there. I think I'm going to be scared. I think I'm going to freeze up. And tell them it's okay to be honest, because it is okay to be honest. I would much rather have someone tell me, I don't think I can do it, than say, oh yeah, I can do that. And then, Peterson, come here. and then, you know, have them say, oh yeah, no problem, I can do that, I'll do that for you, I'll check for multiple threads. And then when the time comes, they're sitting there going, you know, and all of a sudden someone sneaks up from behind them going, where did that guy come from? You know, customize the plan for your little 2-person group. And then finally go over the plan. Go over the plan again and again if necessary. Just say, hey, you know, do you remember what you're going to do? Every now and then, just say, hey, do you remember what we're going to do as we're out? You know, do you remember that we're just going to separate? We're going to try and keep things under control. You know, what's your role going to be? Just kind of go over things kind of quietly. If you have a very interactive spouse, can you say, hey, you know, you want to rehearse it with me? You know, we'll just pretend that this lamp pole is an assailant. And, you know, we'll pretend and and see how things go from there. Until then, I hope you have a good night. I hope this helps you out.